I'm going to bring on our normal panel that's going to be joining us forever. They all sign contracts, so they have to die in order to break them, which is fine. Going to bring on, if you don't know Rob by now, then you should probably just close out and leave because you're not worth my time. But Rob is a law student right now, and he is in law school going in to be a lawyer, all that good stuff. And we've been lifelong buddies forever. And he ended up teaching my civics course in high school, and we also worked together. Rob, you have anything else you want to tell about yourself real quick? This will be the last time you have to do this, I promise. And then people are just on their own.
No, I just go to school up here in the Midwest, and I try to keep myself as incognito as I can, just because censorship on campus can be a real thing. So I want to be careful.
I love it because you're like our little ninja. It's so awesome. And then it's mirrored. That side is Travis. Travis and I have been friends since I was like little, and we always did like a lot of really dumb stuff. Like whenever I went over to his house, my mom was like, "Don't do anything stupid." And then whenever Travis came over to my house, his mom was like, "Don't make Josh do anything stupid." So that's about our relationship. This guy has like you were like airdropped on top of mountains and snowboarded down. You've been dropped in South America and like walked your way up. Like just a bunch of crazy stuff. So Travis, tell us a little bit about yourself and I guess why I brought you here.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. My background is in information technology, but an information technology director for oil and gas companies for the past 5-10 years. And the other passion in my life has been adventure and knowledge. And Josh and I have had a lot of deep conversations, and that sparked kind of this aspect of our relationship of talking about current events and the underlying substructure that makes those things up. So really excited to be on the show with you, Josh. I know that we have a lot of variety of opinion on this panel, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Really excited to be a part of it.
With the whole thing surrounding the whole Federalist Faction subsidiaries, my Schumann Show is going to be more delegated toward a religious aspect. I'll pretty much just be doing religious items on the straight up Schumann Show. But whenever you see the Federalist Faction, that'll be more of a show based around culture and politics with a panel. We'll have on a special guest today. I believe we're bringing on JD Rucker. It'll be phenomenal when he comes on. You'll love that guy. On top of that, I kind of see going with the Federalist Faction would just be to continue to bolster the conversation, to be able to bring different viewpoints. We have a potential atheist that's going to come on the show. We're going to discuss if you can have morality without God. We're going to bring on some lefties, if we can get a hold of them, bring them on the show, just to get where they're coming from so that we can start to exchange ideas and all that stuff. Because I think that's really important is we've all stopped talking, and that is something we just cannot do in this temperamental climate that we live in. Well, so far, my day was great. I came home and I don't know if you guys have seen Dexter, but there was like plastic hanging from my walls and coated on the floor. And then as soon as I open the door, I just hear my wife, "Josh, can you come here for a minute?" And I'm like, nope. And I had to turn around and run away. So that's how my day has been going. Besides all the craziness of what's happening with the politics. So what was your guys' voting experience like?
I actually voted early. I think I did it last Wednesday, and it was probably one of the easiest things I've ever done. Where I'm at, they just take a look at your ID card, say, "Hey, yep, go over here," and they usher you along to get your ballot. Then they say, "Okay, go over here," and then they just pick a ballot station and fill your dots, and then you insert it right into the machine. It was one of the easiest things I've ever done, and from the looks of the place that I went to, it's a college stadium. Mm-hmm. It was built for a lot of people, and there was probably maybe about people voting, maybe about 10. But it's not like there was going to be I could not see people being outside the door. It was they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, which is nice. What about you, Travis? What did you do?
You know, I've never had a bad experience voting in North Dakota. I mean, even pre-COVID. It's always been a very streamlined process. And we're really spoiled in this state just because we have a lot of things that are like that.
Yeah.
And becomes very difficult for us to be able to see the bigger picture, empathize with people who their voting process isn't quite as fluid. And I think that we're starting to see the side effects of that right now, where it's like, you have states like Florida where they've had major controversies in the past. So they've had to systematize and drastically improve their voting mechanisms. And have, these debacles in the battleground states that we're seeing right now that really comes down to really poor process, poor management of process, and then people who are also trying to shake the substructure of the system in itself. So it's been fascinating just to take a look at more of a macro scale and see what's happening nationally versus how it is here in North Dakota, where it's very simple.
Yeah. So my experience was weird. Myself was normal, and
yeah, that's
my
right.
wife was not normal. So my wife is not born in the United States. She is an immigrant. And she came over, and this was the second election she voted in. So she voted in 2016, had no issues. Everything was fine. About a year or two before is when she became a citizen. Well, anyhow, so we're going through our lines. We get our little ballots, and we're handing them our IDs and stuff like that. And she hands her, and like, you guys, like real IDs, right? Like you have to bring in a bunch of paperwork to prove that you're a human person. Like they want like your fingers and a bunch of other paperwork. When we went there, she handed her the ID thing, and she turns over to the gal beside her, and she's like, "She's illegal." And I was like, "Oh no!" Like ICE is going to come bursting through the door, and my wife is just going to be up in Canada, which I guess is I don't know. I mean, I love my wife and everything, but I don't know if I'd have to pay half still or not. But when she. Then they took her aside and they started talking to her about all this stuff. Like, hey, like, do you have like this 1039 BC document or whatever that proves that you're a citizen? And like, Ashley's like, yeah, it's in my purse. Well, she doesn't carry a purse. So like, she was being very facetious with these people. And she's like, if you don't know my wife, she is like a strong-headed, like she will put you in your place so fast, it will make your head spin. Like, I know, I've been downstairs a few times, okay? But when we got to this, then she turned. So we're going through, and we had to talk to two lawyers that were there, and they didn't know what was going on. They're like, "Well, it has to be like a glitch in the system. We don't know why she isn't able to vote." And then she turns to the one guy, and she's like, "Well," or to me, and she's like, "Well, is this discrimination?" And I'm just like, "Whoa, babe, you're a little too light skinned for that. You're Canadian. You're not black. Let's calm down." And it's like, this can't be happening right now. And all of a sudden, so they put her ballot in like this weird manila envelope, and they're like, "We'll just hold on to this for a little bit and just contact your senator and see how things go." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Like it's gonna be like
contact your senator.
Hear anything? Like, yeah, reach out to John Hoeven. Everything will be fine. He's like a fairy in the sky. Just take care of it." It's like, this isn't.
Doesn't he have other things that are a little bit more important to do?
Well, yeah, right. I was like, this is weird. But so we figured her vote wouldn't count, and she was mad. I mean, like, I didn't think she cared that much about politics. She cared. I promise you, she cared. It was important. And well, anyhow, so the next day she got on the phone and she called him up, and she was immediately given to this attorney, and she just laid the hammer down. She's like, "This is what's wrong. I have put in my time, and I need to make this work." And at the end of the conversation, she's like, she told me, "Somebody will call you back in 10 minutes to see if it's fixed." And she says, as soon as I hung up, somebody called me back. And I was like, "Yeah, I'd call back too. I don't want to get killed." And so she got this phone call back, and they're like, "Your vote went through. Everything's fine. This will never happen again. We promise. And if it does," and then it turned like straight up mafia. "If it ever happens again, get their name, their full name, get their position, where they work, where they live, and let us know." And I was like, "All right, well, that's creepy." I mean, the government kind of knows that already, right? But so now everything is good. So she'll be able to vote again. So I want to jump over to like this. Do you guys ever remember an election cycle like this?
Yeah, I was alive in 2000.
Yeah. I wasn't alive, but I was on the bus, Rob.
I remember being we lived in the DC area, or around DC, and I remember going to the Naval Observatory with my mother, my sister, and yelling at then Al Gore's house, "Get out of Cheney's house! Get out of Cheney's house!" And this is
Was it to this magnitude?
What?
Was it to this magnitude?
No, not at all. Especially because, this is 4 states and there's not as much fishiness going on. There wasn't as much fishiness going on there as there is here. It was just mass confusion. It was just like, well, what do you mean there's ballots like these, and what are hanging chads, and what do you mean they have to now take the intent, they have to decipher the intent of these ballots, of these hanging chad ballots. It was madness. And
can you describe what was the hanging chad?
So in Florida elections, they don't use fill-in ballots like with pens. There's a little a tool you would use, and you punch who you wanted. You put the ballot in, and it fell into like a preset schematic of these are candidates, and then you use the tool, punch who you want to vote for, and then you take it to the next person, and they put it in the ballot box. It wasn't like there was a digital reader, nothing like that. So what would happen is that when they've used this tool and punched the ballot, they either didn't punch enough, or they punched off the sides a little bit, just not even pressure. And now the ballot is there's a hanging part of the ballot, and so
hanging.
Yeah, and so then they called them chads, and
Get it now.
Yeah, and they ruined the name Chad for probably a good 20 years, and it was so then there are these partial chads that were hanging, that were almost kind of dimpled off, almost like someone tried to push them but didn't get all the way through. And so now they have to, and they were like, well, no, this one's a chad that we need to count, because it looks like his intent was to punch this chad. And I mean, I was in middle school at this point, and I was like, it's a ballot.
Yeah.
Later on in my life, it was my high school civics teacher that said if they would have given them bingo doppers, then there wouldn't have been a problem with the elderly population down in Florida.
Travis, do you remember anything like this growing up? When that happened, I mean, I think I was still on the bus going to elementary school.
I do remember it. Yeah, that would have been, I was in elementary school, because I remember we were in our house in Dickinson in town. And I remember the controversy around it and the talking heads on the news. But the interesting thing about it, and I was probably too young to understand it, but I didn't really see any of the same cultural bifurcation that we have right now between Republicans and Democrats. And I think that,
I mean, you didn't break out into a brawl on the school bus, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think that there's probably 2 parts of it. I think that the political polarization at the time wasn't necessarily as severe, and the temperature wasn't quite as high as what we're experiencing right now. And I think that the other aspect of it is that with the internet, it's amplified. All of these different voices and opinions, and the polarization is amplified because of the binary view of how we're interacting with each other. And it's driven people into, it's almost like tribalism, but with two tribes that hate each other.
And so
I kind of talked about that. It's so weird that the party that is calling for more government is the party that's fractioning down into more tribalistic tendencies.
Right. And it's also, that's something that really drives me insane, especially on the left, is the same party that is calling for more government is also the one that says that Donald Trump has too much power. Yeah. And it's frustrating for me, more of a constitutional libertarian, because I'm like, guys, we agree. Why can't we realize that we agree, and we should reduce the amount of power held by this one specific function? But then you lose the argument entirely. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. And it's almost because we've lost track of the core axioms that we all believe as Americans. I have to plug this book that everyone should go on Amazon and buy, the Constitution. Yes. Wedding video. That's how much it means to me. But
this wasn't coordinated at all. I had this for years.
but there's the fundamental axioms that we built this nation upon with individual liberty and restricted government that most people, when they boil it down, agree, and if not that they've realized it yet, simply because of their actions and how they feel about the current state of affairs. So it's challenging. And like you had mentioned, Josh, you're trying to reopen those conversations to be able to talk with people and have actual civil conversations so that we can start to bridge that divide.
Yeah.
I think one quick point about like what was extra in the Florida thing. So the extra part of the Florida thing is that there was a recount that happened, and they went through the recount, and that's when they're going through all this hanging Chad madness. And then there was a second recount, and then the Florida Supreme Court, I think, or the state AG said, like, okay, recount's done, we're done. And then Al Gore comes in and he says, hey, I found like 400 more ballots, which that doesn't sound familiar, does it?
He found them personally?
Yeah, like there's like, look, I have 400 more ballots, and the state AG is like, nope, no, we are not doing this, and she shut down the count. So then Al Gore appealed that decision to the Florida State Supreme Court, and they came up with this really just very intricate, very awful ruling, and that the recounts keep going. And then it went up, and that's when George Bush appealed it to this Supreme Court of the United States, and that's when the infamous Bush v. Gore happened.
Okay.
And if you ever listen to Scalia, he always says, like, it's not a political decision. Al Gore made it a legal decision, and then it came to us, and we had to decide about the scheme of the Florida Supreme Court, which wasn't even a close view. It was a 7-2 decision on that aspect. It was a 5-4 decision whether to stop the recounts.
So what I mean, there's several things we've seen, like in regards to like the fraud that's going on or today, and like I went home sick on Wednesday, and I heard everybody crying fraud when I woke up from not being as sick. And don't worry, guys, it's not COVID. You're fine. Yeah, but I woke up
on this podcast.
Gosh, like I would have to see like decent amounts of evidence or a bunch of things happening in order to count it as fraud. Like that's not crazy. I think I texted you, Rob, and I was like, I don't know, I'd have to see some stuff. And you're like, Josh, it's fraud. And then my phone like started smoking because of like all the resources and stuff you were sending to me. So like let's dig into some, like, what are some of these things that we're seeing? Like, I know we saw like they all just decided to stop counting at like.
That's the first one, and that's the most important one.
Right.
Because so we have on election day, how many states have already counted their ballots that have significantly higher populations than Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Georgia earlier in the day said that they had a pipe burst, which is why some of their like counts were off or their counts were slow, which that's weird. But I don't know how that's going to slow down. I don't know how that's going to slow down ballot counting. But the thing is that you had Florida, which we've just been talking about, has like what 12 million people population, and they were done by 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they're like the decision's over. Like, we're fine. Like, this is the count. Then you had Texas, which is a much higher population. Their counts come in, boom, they're done. California had like 3 votes come in. They called that one.
Yeah.
Yet at 2 a.m. when everyone's going to sleep, all of a sudden when Trump is up by like 600,000 in Pennsylvania, 60,000 or something like that in Wisconsin, and like 100,000 in Michigan, they stopped the count. Who does that?
I thought they all died. I thought they just all died. It was like drinking the Kool-Aid. It was like at this time. Then they all gave their blessings to Biden, and Biden was like, "Worship me," or actually, "Join me." And then
we're all familiar with the oil industry. There is always shift work. There's always someone on an oil site.
Yeah.
There's a hole being dug, or like, I mean, geez, we would get violations if we left location with explosives on location.
Yep.
It's ATF violation. You have to have people all the time there. Have these people never heard of shift work? But the thing is that, and this is something that is endemic to these machine cities, is that you stop the count because then you find out how many ballots you have to get.
Yep.
And that's when, and then you start the count, and then that's how you magically get 100,000 ballots dropped in 100,000 ballots in Wisconsin and in Michigan and Pennsylvania, where it's like, oh wow, we just found these.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna do fraud on this level, at least be like somewhat smart about it. This is blatant in my eyes.
And we're going to get into more of the individual aspects of these things. Travis, what do you think like this has on the effect of like the average American citizen? Just
Oh yeah, it's the sad thing about all of this that's going on right now. It doesn't matter which candidate wins. It doesn't matter if Biden wins. It doesn't matter if Trump wins. Forever, the American people will have lost faith in the election system, and that is absolutely critical in a democratically elected republic. I mean, it's a critical tenet. And if we can't agree that we trust the system that's going to be electing the people that are supposed to be representing us, what's our path forward? And then it opens a whole lot. Before, like me coming from a technology background, I used to see making it all electronic, leveraging the internet for elections as being an increased threat vector. And when you look at China and Russia and the cyber attacks that they have in the United States, I saw it as this is an increased threat vector for foreign interference, domestic interference, hackers being able to get into these systems and sway the election. But now, seeing the threat vectors for the physical weaknesses within our election system right now, vote counting system right now, it's caused me to question that, because there's no patch for human stupidity. There's not. But if we can create a technological system that at least has those checks and balances, maybe it's blockchain, who knows? I'm still leery of it. That's at least an argument that I'm open to now that I wouldn't have been 5 years ago.
Yeah. So the thing I have, or that I kind of resonates in my mind, goes back to like the integrity and how the average voter views it. And so we all rely on this, right? Like our whole republic is based upon being able to elect representatives to represent who we are as individuals. Like we don't vote on everything as a majority or a minority. That's just not how this works. It's not how it plays. It doesn't work out, because when people are in suburban areas, they end up thinking differently than somebody who's in a rural area. There's just a different mindset of how life works. Like, like we go out to the farm and we kill our cattle and we get our beef and all that good stuff. And we understand that, where somebody in the city just thinks they go to a grocery store and it's there. Like it, and it's a joke, of course, but there's a totally different mindset of where people are in that moment. So we need these representatives to represent all different views of life from all different parts of the United States. We're a huge country. I mean, massive. And we have a bunch of different viewpoints throughout. And when you take away the ability, or take away, I guess, the essence of the ability to choose who your representative is, and you know that that's faulty, and you lose your voice, that's dangerous, man. Because now your voice no longer matters. The government is no longer ruled by the people of the United States. Now it's whoever is cheating the ballot box. And how do you restore faith in that?
Well, for one thing we definitely need to do is there needs to be some sort of electoral reform when it comes down to identification. I'm a big fan of not having any kind of early voting anymore. I don't like mail-in ballots. They are rife with fraud. The Baker Carter administration had, or not administration, but they had their own committee that they did, and it went around like, what are the best ways to make voting better? And they said mail-in ballots are the most rife with fraud. Even absentee ballots are rife with fraud. In-person ballots are the best thing that you can do. That they're the most secure. And I think that when it comes down to in-person ballots, we need to have a national day off, a national holiday for election day, so that everyone can go to the ballot box, or there has to be like a set amount of time, or you have to say like it's against the law to prevent someone from going to the ballot box.
Yeah,
at a certain amount of time. So that has to be one of the things, and then there has to be voter ID. And this should have been done years ago. This is stupid that we don't have it. The only reason why you don't have voter ID is to have fraud. Now, the arguments that people say is that maybe people can't afford an ID or they can't fulfill the requirements to get an ID. Now, if you can't afford an ID, if like the whole price part of it, then make it free. Have it be a burden on the state if they want free. If the goal is free and fair elections, then there's got to be a price that's paid. As a taxpayer, I'll gladly pay that price.
A libertarian, that'd be like one of the fundamental things I'd say, okay, yeah, if you're going to steal my money, at least do something worthwhile with it. How about people not being disenfranchised? Like, that's kind of a fundamental, isn't it?
Because like every one of these ballots that either it's a dead person or someone that doesn't exist or someone they're never going to check, this is different, disenfranchising us.
Yep.
This is something that like our vote counts less because these fraudulent ballots are, I mean, Pennsylvania is just saying like, oh no, of course we don't have dead people on our rolls. I just went on there about an hour ago. They have like 18 ballots from 1800 or like people on the rolls from 1800. And like, those are the bad ones. And then it goes up to 1859, which I guess 170 years isn't that bad. But then you go like, and then there's a big block from 1920s. I'm like, okay, maybe they're still alive, but they also need to purge these voter rolls. These these are easy. Like, oh, come on. It's not like the federal government going top down. These are state government issues. That's what the Constitution. And so, these are things that need to happen in order to have faith in our elections again. Yep. And this is one I get pretty hot on.
That's one of those things where, what are some of the more practical arguments for not wanting voter ID? I mean, I can see the logic for it. You can go register to vote. I mean, even if, like, I'd say that the argument would probably be like, not everyone has a driver's license. All right, I totally understand that. But if you're issuing out an individual identification that registers you to vote, honestly, that makes me feel like the risk of being disenfranchised is lower, just because I know that I am in the system and my vote is going to count because I took those preventative steps to make sure that those checks and balances exist. Yeah. So what's the actual mindset? And usually this is coming from the left that's against voter identification, aside from someone can't afford to get it. Like, that really doesn't make much sense.
The part that they say is what they disagree with is that what's required to get a birth certificate, to get a ID card. So having a birth certificate, having a social security number. Some people, like, they'll say some people don't have those.
Well, have a driver's license.
Some people can't get them, like, or you have to have a bank statement. And they're like, well, some people don't have bank accounts. These are some arguments that are used because, and then if the states have to set their own requirements, they're going to say that they're going to try and say that sort of like the Jim Crow South, where they'll set the potential for suppression is high, because then they'll set the requirements at some absurd level, like you have to name certain, or you have to like have like this certain bar you have to have, like you have to have like this much money in the bank account, or I don't know, but they just say it's such a high bar to prove who you are.
Well, which the thing is, we all have a driver's license. To get a
not all of us. I've met people that don't have.
I probably wouldn't go that route either. It's like, I mean, and I can see that argument too. It's like there could be, let's just use like the Amish as an example, where you're living in a community, you're living off the land, and you really don't interface or leverage anything that has been paid for by tax dollars. So how do you exist in that system? And now we're moving more into a more digital age, and there's pros and cons that come along with it. I can totally see that for sure. But I think at the end of the day, like, how do we actually move and make a path forward where everyone knows that their vote counts?
Yeah. Well, we have JD Rucker in the studio, and we're getting ready to bring him on to this new Federalist Faction show. Our first guest, JD Rucker, is a Christian. He's part of the American Conservative Movement. He's a co-founder of the Freedom First Network, and he is the founder of the NOQ Report. And it's just an awesome pleasure to have him on here. And let's just bring him in. JD, how's it going? Maybe later. Maybe I'll kick him off now.
Hi, am I on?
You're on, man.
Is this thing working? Hi. You introduced me as something, and I was fiddling, so I didn't hear, so I'll just tell everybody. Yes, I'm that guy.
Cool. What I said. What
he said.
So, JD, what I want to get into like this more of the fraud aspect. We kind of touched on it just to kind of give a little bit of groundwork to what's going on. But what do you think is like the biggest issue in this? Like we have the thing with the Sharpies, we have the thing with them stopping counting at about 4 a.m. or whatever. We have the issue with all of a sudden Biden's gets like 80% of the votes that come in are all for Biden. Like, what do you think is the biggest issue?
So, have you heard of the Hammer and Scorecard?
I am unfamiliar.
Anyone?
No.
That is the biggest issue. So this is a conspiracy theory show, right?
Came to the right place.
So this isn't really conspiracy theory. There's a gentleman contractor for the CIA. He actually went on a congressional testimony back in 2015. It was leaked. Basically, he was saying that, look, there's this program I developed called the Hammer, which is basically it's just a surveillance tool. But then Scorecard is actually used to manipulate vote totals. It's supposed to be used by the CIA abroad, obviously, but there were reports. He claimed that it was used in 2012 to help them get Florida. Was the intention, them being Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I'll keep this short. The best thing you can do is just Google it. You can you'll find a few interviews with Lieutenant General Tom McInerney, who was also detailing it over at Knock Report on a different podcast, Two Mike's podcast with Dr. Michael Schuer and Colonel Mike. But this is a conspiracy theory, except it's actually real. It is legitimate. It's acknowledged by the by Congress and by the Department of not the State Department. I think it was the Department of Defense that basically said, yes, we know about this. We're not going to do anything. He actually even sued the FBI for not following up on it. Long story short is with Scorecard, the Hammers, again, counter intelligence surveillance software, but Scorecard, which is a part of it, essentially intercepts the data between polling place and, say, a data repository like a Secretary of State's office, and it changes those totals. So uses an algorithm to determine, we want to accomplish this, so how do we do that? And it keeps track of all the votes that are coming in based upon estimates, and then it determines, okay, so we need to squeeze 2,000 votes here, 3,000 votes there. We already saw what happened in Michigan. I don't know if you guys saw it. Today they revealed that Dominion voting software, whatever the company's name is, their software glitched to the point of, the one county, it's in 47 counties, but one county that was able to identify the problem actually saw, hey, this shows that Joe Biden won this county by 3,000 votes. But after we fix the software and look into it and check it manually, Trump actually won this county by 2,500 votes. It's a 6,000 vote split in the state of Michigan. And again, this is in 47 counties. This was also the software company that was responsible for the glitches that happened in Georgia. So they did a software update the day before, which even the election officials are like, why are you guys doing a software update the day before? That's kind of weird. And again, keep in mind, people will say, oh, this is conspiracy theory. This is from Politico. Politico reported on this one. And all the locals up in Michigan were the ones who reported on the other glitch today. Same company, a company that happened to hire as their primary DC lobbyist, someone who, well, she just happened to be the former chief of staff for Nancy Pelosi. Oh, boom!
Man,
okay, I'm going to tweet this out. Try to get some more people watching.
By the way, Supreme Court just, or at least Justice Alito just handed down an order that any ballots received after 8 p.m. on Election Day in Pennsylvania be segregated and secured, and if counted separately. There's a petition pending before SCOTUS. Alito orders opposing side to reply by 2 p.m. Saturday. So I think like SCOTUS is putting the foot down pretty hard on this one.
So, Rob, you had mentioned that they're to be counted separately. What does that mean for those votes after the fact? Is it going to be a separate tally?
Yes.
Or are they planning on anticipating on deciding on how they're going to move forward with it later, if it is enough to decide?
That's what it seems, that everything has to be separated, which that's going to create a problem in itself, because there are some claims that say that they were mixing in these ballots in with votes that are been counted on or been sent in before 8 p.m. on election day. So it's gonna, like, the order is nice. It's something that says the Supreme Court's actually looking at this, but on the practical level, this might not. It's going to be kind of hard to implement, and there's probably a lot of people in the Pennsylvania counting house that are probably looking around like that meme with the shifty eyes that are like, we're gonna have to go pull these ballots back.
Well, and that was the thing. But okay, so another story I read that happened down in Michigan, or I'm sorry, in Arizona, was that it was Michigan, where the guys who watch over the polls to make sure that everything's like authentic, they were like kicked out. Like they weren't allowed to be there, is what I heard. Like they were told to stay back from 6 feet. Well, how can you check what you're doing with the ballot to make sure that it's authentic while having to stand back 6 feet? And then they started ushering people out of the building. And not only that, but the ballots that they had set aside, like, that were to be examined and taken into account, after they kicked the poll watchers out, they would take these ballots and they put them back in the normal ballot, or back in the normal stack to be scanned in. How does that work?
Well, first just one quick question for JD. JD, when I was just listening in on the Michigan press conference where the allegations were detailed that Josh was talking about, and they were talking about the software that most of these machines are using in like 47 different counties that was what they say is malfunctioning. Would this be the kind of software that you're talking about, which is or the kind of programming that could be used to flip these counts back and forth?
Yeah. So with Scorecard, it tries to infiltrate the software, and again, it's a communication tool, so it doesn't change it on the user end. Yes is the short answer. Let me give you the slightly long answer, not long, but a little bit more detailed. According to Lieutenant General Tom McInerney, retired, he was at one point the number 3 guy in the Pentagon. He claims that what they do is they determine how many votes do we think we need. Let's try to spread them out, and let's pick target areas where we'll be less conspicuous. But he said that even Montgomery claimed that there's no way to do it without leaving some sort of trace that can be tracked back. Now, the way that you would prevent that from happening is if you have an operative basically on one end or the other. Now, the obvious solution here is wherever the data is being sent, if you have your operative there, who because keep in mind, nobody will know. It's like from if I'm a poll worker, we got the data collected, we're going to send it over to you. We're sending it now. Boom, it's done. Maybe they pick up the phone and they call, hey, did you guys get it? Yep, we got it. They're not sitting there going over the numbers back and forth. And even if they are, as long as you have somebody on one end or the other, you should be safe. You shouldn't have to worry about, what is going on. So in other words, the reason I bring that up is because this isn't like some hacker, controlling everything by themselves. This has to be a conspiracy, a system. Exactly. This has to be done very much in a large scale. And this is why, you'd mentioned, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. I'm new to all this stuff.
I'm Rob.
Hi, Rob. And I didn't catch the other guy's name.
Travis.
Rob and Travis, Shu. Robin Trav. Okay. So you'd mentioned, the monitoring aspect of it. If we need any evidence whatsoever that there's shenanigans happening, this is it. Okay. Is that cheating? I don't know if that's necessarily cheating, but the fact that they're going taking it to court to hold on to their Democrat right to make sure that nobody watches us cheat. Okay, think about that. There's no other reason why you'd be like, oh, no. Nobody can watch us count. Okay, that's not voter suppression. That's not intimidation. That's not going to affect anything other than prevent you from cheating. So if you're going to fight all the way, appeal rulings, take it all the way up to as far as you can go, threaten to take it to the Supreme Court, guys, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that they're hiding something.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I 200% agree. I was telling these guys when it was across 4 different states at the same time of night when they all paused counting, I'm like, nope, this is completely off boards. I've never heard of someone stopping counting, and then the same thing happening in Arizona and Nevada where it's like, oh man, we are tired. It's time to go to bed. And while everyone else is just, there's something going on here. It's an election, kind of decides a bunch of stuff.
That was kind of one of the questions that came up. I mean, one of the questions I ended up getting was for the 4 a.m. stop, well, people get tired. And wouldn't you rather have people alert and awake? Rather than
15-hour shifts when I was working wireline. Sometimes it was more than that. That's stupid.
I actually haven't slept since the election. What day is it?
Don't worry about it.
Anything can I hop in here real quick?
We have a couple of questions here that I want to go to.
That's what I was going to
ask. Any info about watermarks?
I've seen this one float around.
Can I go?
Yeah, dude, definitely. I mean, this is we brought you on.
Okay,
so knowledge.
So I appreciate the vigor pushing the watermarks. I want to make something extremely clear. And I just want to, for those who don't know, here's the brief of it. Allegedly, the DOJ, this has been floating around on 4chan for days. And now it's going, it's hit by Alex Jones, yada, yada, yada. Allegedly, the Department of Justice and the Trump campaign are set up a sting, essentially, where they have watermarked ballots to make sure that they can, basically catch the Democrats cheating. I want to be clear about this. So that there's no ambiguity here. It's impossible. Okay, it was not done because if we had national elections, elections that were run by a centralized organization, I could see maybe doing that. But the fact that they would have to, for them to be able to have access to the ballots, for them to be able to get these watermarks out there, to be able to, they'd have to go through the secretaries of state or the election boards of every individual state, and the vast majority of the ones they'd want to be watching are controlled by Democrats. We haven't heard anything from them. We haven't seen anything about it. Moreover, if you're going to do a sting, let's think along the lines. They say it's coming from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice does not work with Rube Goldberg machine, sting operations. They're pretty simple. It's like, hey, we think there's a bad guy over here. Let's set up surveillance. Done. Step 1, watch. Step 2, arrest. Okay. There's no. Okay. So let's get these ballots for the last 12 months and let's watermark them, and let's we're gonna use this to roll up the deep state and roll up the Democrats, and we're gonna this is gonna be wonderful. This is, folks, a lot of the quote unquote conspiracy theories that come out of Q, come out of 4chan. I mean, a lot of them. I'm not one who dismisses conspiracy theories outright just because they're labeled by somebody as a conspiracy theory. Okay, obviously, since I brought up the Hammer and Scorecard. But in this situation, I want you to stop, take a deep breath, think logically. This reminds me of the time when Q said, hey, guys, don't worry. Robert Mueller is actually a Trump operative. He's on our side. Okay, this isn't real. This is coping. This is wishful thinking. This is, hey, things are looking bad. We need to come up with something that gives us hope. Here's the hope. The hope is that the Democrats had such a horrible candidate, and throw on top of that Hunter Biden, and throw on top of that no enthusiasm. And they were faced with an option, okay, back in, say, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. They knew they were going to cheat the whole time. But they were faced with an option a couple of weeks ago. Do we abort? Because the way we're looking at it, we're going to have to do, we're not talking about a few 100,000. We're talking about somewhere between 5 and 15 million votes that we're going to have to manufacture. And there's no way that we can do that without getting caught. The question we have to ask ourselves, do we have enough pull over big tech, mainstream media, and our own base to be able to suspend disbelief, and make people stop believing their lying eyes? Because anyone who's reasonable in watching this comes to only one conclusion if they're honest with themselves. There's voter fraud going on. This doesn't make any sense. On 54 different levels, this doesn't make any sense. So a couple of weeks ago, they have to make this decision. Do we push forward or do we just let it go? Because we're going to get caught. The question is, are we going to get caught, or are we only going to be caught, where we can sweep it under the rug? And they made the decision, let's go for it. Okay. What that has done is that has made them extend themselves further than they wanted to go. That has made them do things that they know they can get caught for. We have to have faith that the system will work itself out through the legal system, through Trump's army of attorneys, that they're going to be able to take this up and bring enough to the Supreme Court to where the Supreme Court says, okay, we'll take a look at this and let's go ahead and make some decisions. Okay, so they've got 4, we've got 5, basically. Okay, no, those who say we've got 6, they've got 3. You don't know John Roberts. He's not one of us. So I am still, somebody asked me yesterday, and I haven't changed my answer in the last couple of days. I am still at 80% sure that President Trump is going to eventually win re-election. And I would also go so far as to say that this is not 100% great thing. I'm not saying that I don't want him to win re-election, but the way that he's going to have to win re-election with reversals by going through the Supreme Court, that means that we are going to go through the hardest times since the Civil War. We're going to be experiencing a variation of the Civil War after these rulings come down. If Trump is able to essentially unsteal, if the Supreme Court forces them to give back the election they stole from us, the other side's not going to take it with like, thank goodness, we thought there was corruption, but we thought we won fair and square, but since we cheated, no, okay, we accept it. You go, we'll get you guys next time, and we'll be honest in 2024. No, they're going to be like, screw this, take to the streets, burn it all down. This is going to make Ferguson and Minneapolis and Kenosha look like a little middle school brawl between 2 teenage girls. Okay, there's going to be mass carnage. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's all roses. Don't worry, Supreme Court's going to fix this. Guys, this is our first problem that we're dealing with. Arguably, the bigger problem happens right after.
I wanted to, like, Travis, you kind of touched on it a little earlier, like when all this stuff happened before, like we were in elementary school, but like and it wasn't to this magnitude by any means, but we had a different culture. Like we seemed to actually care for one another a lot more than what we did. Like politics wasn't an everyday conversation for a long time. One of the kind of the questions we got here is what do you think drives the conspiracy theories, and how can we know what is true in this crazy world? So, I mean, I'm sure there are some of these are extremely true and some of them are false. What do you think it is, Travis, that drives people to the depths to crush their opponent in such a disingenuous way?
Well, like you were talking about earlier, Josh, we have this unique scenario where the political polarization in our country has been so drastically increased. And you combine that with the political temperature is also rising. And then when you toss the internet on top of that, and you have people with the ability to instantly be able to amplify their voices, usually that's just a reflection of the current political temperature and the polarization that already exists. So when we take that amplification factor and put it into current events at light speed, literal light speed, we see things evolve and escalate much faster than we ever had before. I mean, before, access to information that people could make their minds up about was flipping on the TV, and you were getting information that was already being filtered through a system of people, journalists at the time, hopefully. Maybe there was more journalistic integrity then than there is now. Yep. But the information was given to you at a specific rate. And now that's been 10, 100, 1000x to a point where the political temperature is on the brink of something that we haven't seen in a very long time, and that's very dangerous. And hopefully, I mean, the most positive outcome for the United States right now on both sides is for us to be able to find a way to take a pause, call a ceasefire, if you will, and be able to start bridging the gaps on the right and left to say, guys, where did we go wrong? Where have we lost this ability to be able to communicate with each other? And we need to take this down a notch, and we need to be able to trust each other, and we need to be honest. Because as soon as one side decides to play dirty, the other side has a choice to say, I'm either going to attack you with the same force that you used against me, or cooler heads are going to prevail. And you're going to say, I'll take the high road here, and I'm going to be the adult in the room, and we're going to fix this. We're going to take a step back and fix this.
See, and I definitely appreciate what you're saying and all that good stuff. But my thought is, when is enough? Like, it seems like Republicans have been taking the high road for such a long time. Like, we've always been the party that's been like, you know what, we're fine. Everybody jokes, like when we had like all three branches of government, we did nothing. Like nothing.
I can take this t-shirt.
Absolutely insane that we weren't able to accomplish anything throughout that period of time. And though every time the Democrats get in and they have full power, they're willing to just jam it down our throats, and it's just absolutely insane how fast they can get stuff done, but we can't. And I think part of that is because we want to take the high road and we're not willing to get in the mud and play dirty. I got another question, probably handled by Rob and JD. I'll let you two take this one, but can Trump? Oh, it doesn't show the whole thing. That's cool. I can read. Can Trump require by order of executive order for each state to provide the number of registered voters by party and the number of votes to each candidate?
Elections are handled by elections are given in the Constitution under Article 2 to be handled by the states. I don't think that he can supply it to that he can have an executive order cramming down onto the. It'd be looking as the executive cramming down on the states, something that he can't. It'd be federal overreach at that point. I think it as nice as it would be. I think that that each campaign in each state is the one that's going to have to be taking this fight on the ground. And like JD was saying, there is so much there. Like there is so much that you can hit on, and the fact that it's not like this is not unusual when it comes down to ballots and like this kind of falsity. It's just that, like you were saying, Josh, this is the first time that we've actually had Trump in the we've had a fighter in the White House. I mean, like there's like, if they wanted to try this with somebody else, go ahead. But this, like, to test Trump like this is not the way. I mean, this is not the way. Like Trump is a knife fighter. He is gonna go down to every last option that he has, and he's gonna fight for every inch, because if there's a guy that's not gonna lose without a fight, it's Trump. I mean, that's why this is in the election of 1960. There's major allegations that JFK stole that election, and how they would do it is that they said they'd come on the radio and say, "Oh, Nixon's ahead by 3,000 in Illinois with only Cook County left to go." Now, if anyone's read about Cook County, that is a machine. So then they're like, "Sweet, Cook County's still got a report, and they just told us how many ballots we need." And magically, they're like, "Hey, now with Cook County reporting, they're like JFK's up by 8,000, and he won Illinois." So, like these machine cities like New York, you had Blagojevich talking about Chicago too today on Newsmax. He was saying like, yeah, I think he said like, "Is there ballot stealing? Is the Pope Catholic?" was his response. He knows that this is that they've been doing this for years, and this is why you see in the election we have now that in these four states that all of a sudden like paused, all these votes started coming out of Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee, and they always hold back the urban centers, the big urban centers, because that's when they can start pushing these ballots out, and like that's why you have Milwaukee County having an 89% or 87% turnout rate, which is 5 deviations above any kind of turnout, which would mean that, like, I think it was 71% in 2008. You're saying that Joe Biden, who had a handful of people at his rallies, in each of his rallies, got more vote turnout than Barack Obama in 2008. Now, if we don't remember 2012, Barack Obama got less votes in 2012 than he got in 2008. And they're saying right now, and I don't know about population growth, they're saying right now that Joe Biden, again, got 4 million more votes than Barack Obama did in 2008.
Yeah.
Does anything, like, logic would say no.
Yep. JD, did you have anything to add to that? Because I got another question that kind of spins off that.
Well, 2 quick notes. Blago said that, asked, is the Pope Catholic? I would say that's not necessarily a yes.
True. Yep.
Just saying. Not wanting to turn this religious.
That's what he meant by that statement.
I'm a papist,
But
I agree.
But the second part, you noted the highly unlikelihood of getting close to 90%. Keep in mind, voter rolls are always larger than the actual total number of voters. Okay, because they include, as we know, dead people. They include people who've moved. People, when somebody comes onto the voter roll, their name is instantly added. But if somebody leaves the voter roll because they died or moved, okay, they're not removed. Okay, it's in many cases they're never purged. For years, there was a 170-year-old who was found voting. 170. Okay, his name was Methuselah or something. I don't know, but yeah, so when they're saying 90%, what they're actually saying is 100%.
I think it was Abraham.
Methuselah was a young man at that point. But anyway, what's the next question?
The next question that came up is from Really Waldo. I don't know if that's a question or not.
Really?
Do you think there is any chance that the core problem here is the fact that voting regulations are decided at the state, county level? And I'll start off on this, but I kind of want to go around the horn on this because I think that this question in general pertains more than just the electorate. So I don't think the problem is that it is regulated at a state or county level, simply because you need people from all over. And if you try to have something that's federally mandated and it umbrellas and sprinkles down among the rest of the United States, then you're going to have miscommunication. You're going to have flaws through how it's done. That in different states run in different ways. Like I think that North Dakota is the only state that you don't have to register to vote. And all the other states you have to register. Everybody seems to do things differently in different states just because you have different populations. You have different, I think even culture kind of comes into it. But you have different demographics that all need to come together. And it's up to the state holders or the counties to decide where these places are put up so that people can come to them. And I think it's better organized at a smaller level is basically what I'm trying to get at. I think that's a much easier way to do it. Travis, what are your thoughts?
I am always 100% a proponent of giving the states and localities more power than the federal government. And I'm not going to say that means that we're going to get the best outcome every time. I mean, this election cycle is proof that there are absolute flaws in the way that some states and some counties are dealing with these things. But the reality is, that is a symptom, and we don't fix the disease by just doing a blanket federal policy that blankets across everyone. Because like you said, Josh, our requirements are drastically different from state to state, from county to county, and that is why our government is created the way that it is, where we have that power from the individual, the local, the state, then the federal. So I think that we're looking at this as we have this broader issue that exists in the United States right now. And the flaws that we're seeing right now being exposed to this election cycle at the local and state level are just symptoms. And we have to fix that. And the only way we can fix that is as individuals taking action in our cities and in our states to be able to remediate it. I mean, that's the real issue here is we can't just have the federal government step in like a parent and fix it. When our responsibility is to take responsibility where responsibility has been abdicated. And there has been a lot of abdicated responsibility at the state and local level. Let's start there. Let's start taking responsibility for our communities.
Yeah, and just to add on, I mean, I think it brings it to, I mean, think about this, okay? So Trump is looked at as like the federal head, right? The executive, right? If the election was up to him, why would you want that? Like, for just speaking from a Democratic point of view, why would you want him overseeing everything?
We already have people not trusting the system after this.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's a crazy thought because you got to remember, like that card plays both ways, man.
Mm-hmm.
JD, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree that this is a state and local issue. But people, the calls are going to come in for this to be federally fixed, and that is a quick solution. You know what? Let's just nationalize it. Number one, there's never been anything in the history of the United States of America outside of the military that has been improved by nationalizing it. Whether you're looking at the EPA, Department of Education, anything outside of our national defense, okay, it just doesn't work. Okay, we might think, oh, this would be a lot easier if there was one solid way to do it. No, that's just, even in voting, it's not like that. And I also agree that there's already been plenty of rights and responsibilities taken away from the states or even abdicated by the states. And that's something that we cannot, that's a trend that has to be reversed. But here's the biggest reason why I'm against that concept. We now know that, the system is broken. The system is way too vulnerable. The system is flawed. The system sucks. So let's figure out a solution. Let's figure out a solution at in the laboratories of counties and states across this nation. Let everybody handle it. Let everybody try to figure it out. And if they're not willing to figure it out, maybe they just like the ability to cheat, then the people will need to be told to vote those people out of office. If you get a nice, let's say a nice rural county in Montana that comes up with a perfect solution, they test and they try it out, and then it gets tested out, maybe the same election, or maybe it started in the primary, and then by the general election, it's implemented somewhere else. And they like it and they love it and they go for it, right? And then it turns out to be this system works. That's how you say, hey, they got it up there in Montana. Why can't we have it here in Chicago? They were able to prevent voter fraud. What are you guys so scared of? Okay. That's how America, this is, what we're describing here is essentially a microcosm of what makes America greater than other countries in this world, is that we allow innovation at the local level. We shouldn't. I don't say that we don't, we do. But we shouldn't interfere from the top down. It should be the top learning from the bottom. Okay. And if anything, I like the inverted pyramid of federalism where look, who is at the top? Who is ultimately in charge of the United States government? I am. And you are. The citizens are. And then what's the next level of government? The local level. And then the city, and then the county, and then the state, and then at the very bottom level, the catch-all, called the safety net. That's where the federal government comes in to just make sure that people don't fall through the cracks, that stuff doesn't happen. But decisions need to be made by the individual and the family, and then the local, and then the city and the county, and then the state. Forget all this, we need a universal this and a universal that, and one solution, one ring to control them all. I'm not into the whole Sauron method of rulership over the United States. We need it to be localized. One more quick anecdote, because I saw Jeff Dornick in the chat. So in Star Wars Episode 2, the decision was made. They knew there was a problem. They found all these clones that were supposedly being built for the Jedi to be able to take on the droids, right? And it's like this all seems sort of fishy, but let's go ahead and this one time let's go ahead and use it, because we got to go save Obi-Wan and whatever Princess Queen Senator Amidala and Anakin. You know, we got to go save them. So let's go ahead and commandeer all these droids. You know, that was their solution. If you think about it, had they just, you know, accepted that, you know what, those 3 people are going to die, but we're not going to break our vow to, you know, whatever you want to call it, clone federalism. You know, we're not going to use these. Just let them die, and we'll figure out another solution. Had that happened, everything would have been fine. The Emperor wouldn't have won. Okay, the Emperor wouldn't have won. Keep that in mind. Do you want to be Sauron and the Emperor, or do you want to be a Federalist? That's the question you have to ask yourselves, folks. That's the question. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. JD Rucker, Thursday.
Rob, what do you think on that question? And then real quick, and then I want to move on to our last one before JD has to go.
I'm in agreement with all you guys. It's a state issue. The state can make their own rules. However, and it's better that way, just because the federal government. I mean, there's not an efficient thing that the government's done besides defense, like JD said. There's no way that a top down is gonna work for the states. Just like it's just like what Trump said in the debate. If a state wants to do $15 minimum wage, they have the right to vote that in. Just like he said that he couldn't, it might work for California, it might not work for Indiana, but like the state can vote like that, and they have their own laboratory of democracy, just like Justice O'Connor has said many times, and they have that right. They are closest to the problem. They are and they are able to fix it there. But like. At the end of the day, I think that one of the worst things that's ever occurred is the 17th Amendment to the Constitution that says that senators have to be elected popularly by the populace. Because at that point, you have taken a cut out of the American root for their voice to be heard, because because now the senator is not elected from within the state legislature. It's not someone that you like. That really, like how many of you actually know a couple of your state reps?
Right.
Okay, JD. So these are things that we actually need to that we should be caring about. But since it's been taken away from us, that voice isn't there. If we were actually having to care about who goes to Washington from our state legislature, then our voices, or we might be a little bit more comfortable having our voices heard in our state assemblies. And that's where these state laws get made, in these state assemblies and state legislatures. So we've been made to care so much about all this national stuff and all this and the federal government, what they're going to do for us, when really the federal government should not be doing all these things. There shouldn't be the Supreme Court shouldn't have these should be addressing these laws of abortion and because they're not in the Constitution. And not saying that I think that without a constitutional amendment we should ban abortion. It should go to the states, because the states can make those decisions. The voters can make those decisions. Heck, what is it, Oregon or Washington? I think it was Oregon. They just legalized all drugs, not marijuana. All drugs.
I know. I'm going there tonight.
Peanut butter sandwich. Let's go.
Yeah, crack peanut butter sandwich. So if they want to do that, that's all them. Not my bag, but yeah, no. It's closest to the problem. It's so we need to like JD was saying, we have a voice, each and every one of us, and we have to convince each other. And people in these states need to start doing this. They need to be walking onto their legislatures and saying, why is this election such a mess? Florida did it. Florida completely changed their voting procedures after 2000. And look what happened. They were done in 3 hours.
It's the same mentality as a free market. There has to be competition. In places like Michigan, I mean, honestly, they should feel embarrassed and they should change. And that's how it works. But there's so much protection. There's so many layers of protection to say, our side is for me, so I don't have to feel embarrassed because we're doing them a service. And that's wrong. And it's fundamentally flawed. And that's a cultural thing. We have to attack this from all sides. And culture begins at the individual.
Yep. So where do we go from here? JDL, I'll start with you, or Actually, I'll end with you, considering.
I'll take it from here.
We'll take it out. What do we do now? When is enough? Is this like, where do we fight?
This is the hill. This right here, this is the hill. This is where, like, if we were dealing with maybe like Romney or Bush or that's like Bob Dole, like
there will not be another.
They're not the fighters that they would not be fighters. We would like this right here. Trump is going to fight for every square inch of ground that he's going to go for. He's going to go to every court that he can get to try and get this process handled. And I've been waiting for this kind of fight for 20 years, and finally it's here. And we need to be calling the Trump campaign. We need to be giving money to their legal. We need to be saying, like, don't give up this fight. We need to say that we're behind you. We're sick of this. I'm sick of this. Like, this shouldn't be that hard.
Mm-hmm.
One person, one ballot. But since there's power involved, there's corruption involved. And like JD was saying, if they're not allowing the light to come in, this is a simple answer. Like, if I'm any kind of appellate judge, I don't care what's in the brief. I'm asking, okay, why did you guys pause counting? Why are you blocking me? Why are you blocking people from even recording from outside the doors? This is like, on no level does this make any possible sense. So, like, we have to be calling. Well, for one thing, like we were saying, start from the bottom up. Talk to your congressional reps. Talk to your senators, and you got to let them know, because no one on social media is talking besides like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Senator Graham.
Yep.
Like, we need to say, like, you better, like, put your backing behind this, or you're not going to get elected in this state again.
All right.
Yeah, and like this, we need to be using our voice. We need to be emailing our legislators, our senators, our congressmen, and we need to be talking. We need to call the Trump headquarters or the White House and just say, "Hey, don't give up. We're behind you 110%. Keep the fight up."
JD, what about you, man? Where do we go? Or what do we do? What declares a victory?
Long term, or just for this election?
For this election, and possibly long term.
Well, I agree with Rob. We have to show our support, and that starts tomorrow. For those of you who are watching Friday night, tomorrow, there's a call. It's all over social media, all over Twitter. I'll admit I didn't really look too deep into it, other than I saw that it was happening tomorrow, and everybody's supposed to go to for peaceful protests. And to be clear, we're talking about actual peaceful protests, not the CNN, MSNBC version of Black Lives Matter peaceful protests. So don't be like, oh, peaceful protests, right? Bring my riot gear. No, actual peaceful protests at state capitals of wherever you are. Okay, everywhere. Okay, we need to have our voices heard. This has to be seen, and they need to know what they're dealing with. They need to know that we're not going to allow this to happen. It's not just trust me, President Trump knows that we support him. Mm-hmm. The people who don't know how much support he has, who thought they would challenge us, they're the ones who need to know. They're the ones who need to be shown a show of force. And I'm not talking, again, peaceful protests, constitutional protests. That's what I'm talking about. But they need to see the numbers. They need to see the people. They need to see our faces. They need to hear our voices, see our signs. And they need to know that, oh crap, we might have just bitten off more than we could chew by making Joe Biden the most popular president allegedly of all time. Okay. So it starts there. Yeah. But I agree. Call the White House, call the Trump campaign, call your state reps, call everybody, get on social media, blast it out there. Go to noqreport.com and read all those stories there and share it with all your friends and family and donate. I mean, wait. Sorry. I went off in a different direction there. Do all those things. Let's get the word out. Spread the truth and avoid spreading falsehood. Listen, I want to be clear about this. Okay, nothing. The left will use we could be right about 100 things. If we throw out one thing that's false, they're going to be like, it's debunked. There's no fraud. Okay, stop worrying about a watermark and focus on the blatant, unambiguous, demonstrable fraud that's happening. Okay, share Project Veritas videos. That's pretty demonstrable.
Yep.
Okay, share the stuff that we're talking here, and I would maybe not share so much about the Hammer and Scorecard. That's for more of a smaller audience, but you can talk about like Dominion voting systems. Okay, you can talk about what's happening with all of this fraud. Talk about what happened in the county in Michigan that was literally, it was a Republican county, and they thought, oh my gosh, they were actually touting. It's like, look, this is how popular Joe Biden is. He flipped this county. He's up by 3,000. Oh no, wait, he lost by 2,500. It was a software glitch. Never mind, nothing to see here. Get that word out. As far as long term, I have to agree.
Definitely.
17th Amendment. We got to get rid of the 17th Amendment.
Yep.
And we should probably consider looking into the 19th Amendment.
Before we go to Travis,
come on, somebody. That was my best joke of the night, and nobody caught that.
Sorry, give it to me one more time.
I said we should definitely get rid of the 17th Amendment, and we should probably take a close look at the 19th Amendment.
Yeah,
that was a joke. So women don't come at me unless you have.
No, I'm serious. We should look at it.
So, but I do have to go. Speaking of food, I've got to run. So,
all right, JD, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Again, if you want to check them out at the NOQ report for more of
Before you go,
JD Rucker. I appreciate it, sir. Have a blessed evening. We're going to continue on here for a couple more minutes.
Sorry, Rob, you're going to have to hit me up.
3 minutes ago, Trump just moved ahead of Obama in 2008 for second most votes.
You mean the most
votes by a candidate in history?
So let's just say, for the record, if we're talking about reality, that President Trump is now the most truly voted for president of all time.
All time.
There you go. Take care, JD. We'll definitely have you on again.
Take care, guys. God bless.
So something that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit is, so election of our lifetime, right? What are your guys' thoughts on that real quick? Because if this truly is the election of our lifetime, I mean, we need to get busy. Because if you really think that the whole bottom is going to completely fall out and that we're going to be left to a desolate communist wasteland, either use the rhetoric or don't. Like, that's what I'm getting at. I'm sick of hearing like this is the election of our lifetime, and then everybody's making it sound like it's going to be the end of the world if Biden gets elected. If that's truly the case, why are you sitting at home? And so what does election of our lifetime mean? Travis, go ahead.
Honestly, I think that taking this through the court system should be a point of unity between Republicans and Democrats. I honestly believe that. I honestly think that Democrats, no matter who wins, I mean, even if Trump comes out ahead and he wins, take it through the courts. Biden wins, take it through the courts. And if you're a Democrat and Biden's your guy, I would encourage you to support taking it through the courts for the simple reason of, if you win, you want there to be, without a doubt, that you won legitimately. Because the last thing that we need is to have 4 more years of sensational media. And what happens with that is it pulls us apart, because these media companies, here's the thing. Here's the truth about mainstream media. It's a dying business model. It's nothing nefarious. It could be nefarious, but it's not nefarious. They're losing money. And the way that they make money is by getting you angry and getting you to click. They'll get you to click on something, like CNN will get you to click on an article title because you disagree with the title. Hey, guess what? You just gave them money. And now if we go into a Biden presidency and it's completely vanilla, how are they going to make their money? I mean, the Trump news cycle was what? Every 4 hours, maybe every 4 minutes, they had new material to be able to write on that either infuriated half the people or was in support by the other half. And that was a fantastic revenue model for them. What are they going to do now? So it's in their best interest to get everyone worked up into a frenzy and continually, so that for the next 4 years, they have a profit model.
Right.
So what we need to do now is take a step back and say, we need to go through this fine-tooth comb. So whichever candidate wins, we know it's legitimate, so that we can first have trust in our electoral system, and two, so we can start bridging the divide between the two sides so that it doesn't end up. Right now, we're in a virtual civil war. We have two polarized sides that are attacking each other virtually and with rhetoric. The last thing that we want for this country is for it to move beyond that, to move to fists, to move to knives, whatever that talking point is. We do not, because we are brothers and sisters in this country, and we need to remember that. We need to remember that the people on the left side of the aisle, on the right side of the aisle, we're a big family. We're one big country, and we need to come together and be able to talk about our differences in a way that's actually going to be useful and not just binary rhetoric. That's what I think. That's what I think we need to do to move forward.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think we've all been slinging stones forever, right? And like everybody's looking for that one punchline, the one-liner to drop your enemy and to bring him to his knees and to just destroy that other opposing viewpoint. But what does that give you? Like Jordan Peterson brings this up when he's talking about his wife. Like, you don't want to argue with your wife to the point where you make her the loser, because now you have to go to bed with a loser.
Right?
And nobody wants to go to bed with a loser.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to live in this country together. We all have to move forward together. That should be the thing that rallies us all together. That's what America was a giant melting pot of people from all over the world, all over the globe, and it has been that way. We have people coming in, but what did we rally around? We rallied around the ability to become Americans, to rally around the flag and have a common interest that, if by the sweat of my brow and by the blood of my hands, I'm going to make this the best country that has ever surfaced this entire earth. And we did it. We had it. We were that country. That is the country we are. And Trump recognized that, and he was able to bring that back. And I think that it's been so lost after seeing Obama going around and apologizing to all these countries. And so when you have that split of people who love their country and people who despise it, it's being able to bring back that focal point that we're all Americans, that we all need to rally around each other, be able to lift each other up. Like people always talk about like the wage gap, or people were born with, not a great starting out in life and everything like that. And other people were born with, a head start in life. Well, the beauty about all that is that we're all Americans, and that many of those that are high up look to bring us down. Like, I know everybody hates big corporations, but take Walmart. If Walmart went out of business, how many people would be without jobs right now? How many people wouldn't be able to put food on the table right now, or save up for college? It's the stack of the financial institutions that it is the inequality in each and every one of us that allows each and every one of us within this country to become more than what we are. But it's up to you to take the responsibility to do that.
And that's where I think that it's indicative that take ideology aside. The fact that people are pushing for top-down federal programs to be able to accommodate for that gap. What that is it is a symptom of us not taking individual responsibility to help our neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
If your neighbor has a disadvantage and you have, let's use the words of the left. If you are in a position of privilege and your neighbor is in a position of less privilege, help your neighbor. Yep. And if you use that as a microcosm, as you extrapolate that out across the nation, you see that those disparities arise.
Mm-hmm.
And it begins at each individual taking on that responsibility to help each other. I mean, that's the reality of what it is. When you talked about, Josh, you had brought the argue with your wife, you don't want her to lose. But when we think about this, like, if our end goal is to actually change people's minds, to win them over to our side, we're not going to do that by throwing stones. Because when you throw stones, you create an enemy forever. What we need to do is live by example, speak truth, and speak and act to the merit of our ideology so that they can see why it's better.
Now, we're going to have, whether this goes to the side of Biden or to the side of Trump, we're going to have people on each side that are going to be like, Well, it was a farce. It was stolen. Blah, like, let's say, theoretically, bear with me, that this goes through the court system, the U.S. court system, and perfectly transparent. Everybody can see everything. You're still going to have, well, yeah, you're still going to have people on either side that are going to be bickering at each other that it was stolen. How do you convince those people that our system of doing things is still authentic?
Statewide audits. This is what needs to happen. Like, and not ballot recounts. Statewide audit.
Somebody
And I don't even care about like just these 4 or 5 states or 6 states. I want every. I would actually want the Florida. There to be a commission where Florida gets an audit, and North Dakota gets an audit, and Colorado gets an audit. And if there's discrepancies or bad ballots, we learn from that. Because how do you learn? What do you do when you fall? You pick yourself back up. You learn. So you learn how to police your ballot systems. You learn how to, but the thing about an audit is that you go by the rules and you go by you make the rules as transparent as possible. This is like, you have to put everything in as much daylight as you can. This has to be as upfront in front of people's eyes as possible if you want to make it legit. So you have to have reports on each of these states and each of their and like either have third parties or private companies that come in and count these ballots, because like, unless you put it in front of people's eyes, they're not going to believe that this is a legit election. And even when if these audits would have happened, God willing, like, there's still going to be people that are going to say, no, it wasn't legit. It was stolen. Like, just like how people say that 2000 was stolen by the Supreme Court or whatever. But that would be a first step. This is going to be one of those generational build backs. But one of the biggest things that we need to do, and I think this is what Trump was doing when he had that executive order where he said, like, we need to get this critical race theory out of these schools and out of these government agencies, because it is actively subverting the vision of America and the goodness of America. It is saying that we're it's the 1619 project. We're based on slavery and subjugating people, not on the 1776 vision. Which, like, if we wanted to be on the 1619 thing, then we wouldn't have an amendment process. If they wanted their own little way of doing things, then there would have been no way to progress besides burn this Constitution, write a new one. Yeah. Founding fathers were more than willing to be prescient and say, like, yeah, we know that things are going to change, as things always change. Personally, I think that George Washington would be crapping his pants if he held an AR-15 these days. But like, I just think it was like they wrote flexibility into the Constitution so that they could. It's the shortest Constitution ever written, and it's the longest lasting because it's meant to be flexible. It's meant to progress, but it's not meant to it's not a high-speed rail. It's meant to progress slowly. It's meant to progress. So even in it has to a federal problem that is going to be federally righted has to have you and your states convincing your other citizens by debate that this thing needs to happen. And once that thing happens, then each state clears it by, and three quarters of the state ratify it. Yep. This is again, these are high bars, but they're not impossible bars. And we need to, in order to start making these leaps forward in these amendments, like we need to have term limits, but there's not going to be a term limit amendment until we actually start like looking at each other, not as our enemies, but our fellow Americans, like Travis and you, Josh, were saying. And to do that, we're going to have to actually start believing that we're not at each other's throats all the time, that we all want the best for each other, and we're all humans at the end of the day. Like JFK said, we all breathe the same air. We all treasure our children's futures, and we're all mortal. At some point, we have to connect with each other on the same basis and say, like, we all have these same things that we have in common. Now, we have these other things that we can work on, and we can work on at a small level, and then like if it rises to the federal side, so be it. But it has to be like, we have to, like, we can't be having this federal debate anymore, because it just puts everyone in every state at each other's throats, saying this state's bad and this state's bad. These people are rubes and these people are like bad words. So like
words.
Yeah.
Like we have to start reinvesting in our communities, not in a like government give me money kind of way, but as us going in and going to church or going to our civic communities and saying like how, and saying from like a me to a Travis conversation, how can we improve this community? How can we should we put a new stop sign at this intersection?
Right. And I think it has to go a bit further than that. Like, I think it has to we need to find that common ground, right? So like when you have an argument with somebody, you don't start at the absolute peak of the argument. You break it down to the absolute base level. Well, right? You know what I mean? Like, we have to find something that we can rally around. And when you're dealing with a side that can't even tell the difference between a boy and a girl, and that's just detached from reality, how is it that you bridge that gap?
You have to find. So I think that like the that last example that you gave, I mean, I would be hard pressed to say that is the majority and not just the vocal minority. I think that that's a good way to approach it. So I think that by and large, people that you run into on the street, like, it's a more nuanced conversation that you can have. And one of the ways I've found, I mean, I love having conversations with people on the other side of the aisle. And as a libertarian, like, a lot of times, like, I disagree with the hypocrisy of both sides often. And what I like to do is approach it from a perspective of, I am going to listen. And I when I say the word listen, I really mean listen. Like, I am going to walk through your logic from beginning to end so that I can understand the nuance. Because most of the time, if someone's well thought, like, let's just say that people aren't just dealing with the rhetoric and they're talking, like, shouting talking points at you. They believe things for a purpose. Democratic socialists believe in democratic socialism because they believe in helping their neighbor. Hey, I got a news flash for you. Conservatives, we like helping our neighbor too. We agree on that. We just disagree on the methods of how we get there. Because, and then they ask, well, why? Like, why wouldn't you want to use all of this tax dollars to be able to help the poor? And we say, I don't believe in extorting or stealing property from someone to give to someone else by default. It doesn't mean that I don't mean I want to help others. I just mean that it's going to be my choice to do it. I'm not going to coerce someone to do it. So I think that, like, to your question, Josh, we have to be able to be willing to listen and completely think through conflicting ideas to be able to attack things from the perspective of the other person, to actually be able to change their mind or at least have a productive conversation. Because that usually doesn't happen. And the internet is a really good example of that, where we can just throw talking points and memes and things that we heard from somebody else, like, you know, some like zinger that Ben Shapiro said, or on the left, like some zinger that the Young Turks said, or Trevor Noah. And that's the existence that we live in. When the reality is, if we were to sit down and have a 1 hour long conversation with someone we disagree with, we would realize, oh, there's actually a lot of nuance to your thoughts, and we're actually attacking this issue at the wrong level of analysis.
Right. And the basis of what this is, and we're kind of winding down now, is when he says that we need to listen, we don't have to agree.
Right.
But the point of having an argument, and I've always kind of stood by this, the point of me having an argument, like, with somebody else, like, isn't to necessarily change their mind. It's to present my ideas in such a way that if somebody were to look in on the way that I was thinking and the way that I was portraying my argument and why it was the way that it was, that when they saw that, they would understand that my argument is the logical argument. I'm not in it to win it. But it's not about that. It's not about throwing each other down. It's to help other people understand what is going on in this crazy world. And that's what I hope that this show brings. We're going to have people on that we don't agree with at all. We're going to have hopefully some people that are on the left. We got, I'm sure some people from the VFU would love to come on. I would love to have John Howie come on, who is a liberal from Canada, who I have had such tremendous, deep conversations with. And he really describes it down to a point of where it is he's coming from and why. And trust me, we get in our arguments for sure. But that's what this show is going to be about. It's going to be about mending these things. It's going to be about bringing this country back together to see what we can, if we can move forward. When we move forward, what is it that we will be working toward? Because it's important for us to find a common cause and to come together as Americans in this great country so that we can move forward in the world and help the other countries. If it wasn't for us, think of where all these other countries would be. And I don't mean that to like be arrogant, but seriously, where would the Middle East be right now? Where would Europe be
the smoking hole in the ground? Like without the American military, there are so many places that would have tank tracks all over them. Like,
oh, exactly. And that's part of it. I mean, we have stood up and said no when nobody else has. And that needs to continue. But we need to have the American people at least on the same page to love their country. Anyhow, that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. We're going to try to keep this within an hour and a half or so. So if you guys want to join us next week, we're going to have a speaker coming on by the name of, hopefully, I haven't called her yet, so she probably doesn't know too much about this yet. But Mary Solomon, and she wrote a book that I think everybody should have. I ended up buying it because I wanted to read at least what people put out before we just have them on the show, and then it's like, hey, I don't know what you did, but you're here now. And he wrote a book called The Government and Its People. And this book breaks it down in such a simple form of why the church needs to be involved in government and what the church's role is within government and why that's so important to bringing us all together. Anyhow, this is Travis.
A weatherman, Josh. You got to get used to pointing in reverse.
Federalist Faction.